All right, and welcome back to the forecast card. Pretty decent season, actually. Ended up finishing the year off on 2 L's on the locks, which kind of sucks. Hopefully, we can bring it back for the tournament. But yeah, on the year went 281, 238, and 8 against the spread. Some of those were money lines on short spreads, or some were plus money. But overall, roughly minus 110 odds on every single bet. Lock record was 17 and 8. Net unit gain, assuming 2 units on locks, 1 unit on all the other bets, bring me to 24.91 unit gain on the season, which is roughly an ROI of 4.43%. So pretty solid. Not as good as my last 2 years. Definitely a bit of a down year, especially to start off the 2025 season. But we finished pretty strong for the most part. I'm pretty happy with how it went. So locking back in for these tournaments. Today we're gonna go over the first 4 games. So that's gonna be Alabama State versus San Francisco, San Diego State versus North Carolina, Mount St. Mary's versus American, and Xavier versus Texas. There's one game I quite like, and 3 games that I kind of just have leans on. I'm probably only going to bet the Xavier game. But for the sake of actually recording it, I'll record all games as my record for the tournament as well. So let's get into the 4 games. And I also have 3 future bets that I'd like to share that are my personal 3 favorite futures, having seen what I've seen to end off the year. All right, heading on to game number 1, we have St. Francis versus Alabama State. Now, on paper, both these teams are dog shit. Basically, not even either of them in the top 300 realistically. Alabama State comes from the worst conference in college basketball, and the SWAC, St. Francis, not very far off in the Northeast. Slightly better, but definitely still bad. Both these teams also pulled off miracle upsets. I would say that St. Francis is more impressive. They beat Central Connecticut 25-7. A team that typically destroys teams just by dropping like 80, 90 points. But I don't know what happened, but St. Francis held them to 43 on their home court. I don't really know what happened, but St. Francis pulled through, made it to the round of 68. Alabama State, tight contest over Jackson State. That whole conference sucks, so I think it's usually more of an open book with who's going to make it out, but good for them. They pull it ahead. Now, on paper, St. Francis is the better offensive team in terms of just shooting-wise. Alabama State, an awful offensive team, but they're actually quite decent at forcing turnovers. And that's basically what any analyst is going to look at when they look at this game. Alabama State, top 35 team at forcing turnovers. St. Francis ranked 348th in how often they give up turnovers. And on the other side, kind of flipped. St. Francis doesn't really force any turnovers, and Alabama State has good ball control. So when you look at that alone, that's where I think Alabama State can keep this game competitive. But again, in the moment, this is the St. Francis team. They've got a good story. When you read about this coach being an old player for the St. Francis, moving all the way up since being a coach for many, many years, I think he's going to be motivated here to really motivate his team here to fight. Alabama State does have the advantage in seniors. They have 2 of their top 3 scorers are seniors. St. Francis's top 5 are not seniors. That gives it definitely an edge to Alabama State, and that's why I think they're actually going to pull this win out down the stretch. I think they're going to have a lot more emotional control. They have a new coach who hasn't really been with the program for long, but he has had some experience with much bigger programs, not as a head coach, but as an assistant coach. And I think in a big moment like this, that might be beneficial. Again, on paper, St. Francis, better free throw shooting team. They're actually quite good at shooting the mid-range, one of the best mid-range teams in general, ranked 84th in mid-range percentage. They shoot the 3 and near basket shots decently well, basically top 200. Alabama State outside of the top 300 everywhere. But again, they get a lot of points off steals. So really going to come down to the turnovers. If St. Francis can figure out how to not turn the ball over, try to keep taking decent shots, they might find some success. They're definitely a more consistent team, as you typically are when you shoot the ball. Relying on getting points off steals is not typically a recipe for success. But again, St. Francis only dropping 43 points. Pretty brutal for them. But when you dig into the numbers a little bit more, both these teams can be a bit further for Alabama State, so you could argue this might be more of a home game for St. Francis. I don't really know exactly how big the followings are for these 2 small market teams, but who knows? Both these teams are riding big win streaks. Obviously, St. Francis is going to be much more well rested for this game, which is a big reason why I think they can keep it close. They haven't played since the 11th. Alabama State played on the 15th. So St. Francis has a lot more time to plan their strategy in beating Alabama State. Trying to figure out how they try to force turnovers. But the bigger difference here is that Alabama State has been playing on neutral. St. Francis just went on the road, played some home games. They have not experienced a neutral court all year. They've only played on a road court or an away court, so this might actually feel very foreign to them. But on paper, I think both these teams are not that far apart. I don't really know much about either of these schools. St. Francis is due for some negative regression. Alabama State also due for some negative regression. Both these teams pretty mid. Obviously, Alabama State is the on paper slightly better team, just stat wise, but they've looked better to end off the year. But again, I think the St. Francis team, they're really, really consistent. If Alabama State can't force turnovers, I don't see how they can keep this game make it a blowout by any means, especially if St. Francis is kind of playing tough to end off the game and definitely not playing really good ball control. We'll see how it goes, but I do think Alabama State the better team. I think they're going to win this game outright. But I do think St. Francis is more motivated, given their history, to keep this game tight. So give me Alabama State to win, St. Francis to cover, plus 4.5. In terms of predicting how well I'm doing on the tournament, I'm going to have two separate trackers, one for advancement and one for cover. So they'll be two separate. All right, heading on to game at number 2, we have North Carolina versus San Diego State. Probably be the most watched of these first 4 games. Maybe Xavier and Texas might battle it, but there's a lot of controversy around North Carolina even being here in the first place. 1-12 in Q1, pretty pathetic. I don't think anyone's happy, and everyone's going to be rooting for them to just lose right now. But I do think that they are the better team, especially the way they ended off the year. Obviously, they were not a good team at all early on. But if you look at their power ratings, over their last 5 games, they've been a top 10 team. Over their last 10 games, they've been a top 14 team. The San Diego State team, defensively, they're good, but they are not a very good offensive team. North Carolina, both these teams are mostly made up of younger players, but both of them are led by seniors, so no huge advantage there. I do think North Carolina has the better coaching advantage, especially considering how their season went. I think they have a little bit more on their plate to show up for this game, just because everyone's kind of doubting them and everyone kind of hates them. I think they want to prove that they deserve to be here, and that maybe they've locked in a little bit more. Conference-wise, North Carolina, they've been the better team. They've, at least ranking-wise, they're one of the better neutral strike teams. They've had a much harder schedule to get here. And if you look at them on paper, at least statistically, I do think it's going to be a tough matchup for both teams, at least on the offensive side. Obviously, North Carolina is a better team, but they do shoot a lot in the paint. Almost 50% of their shots come from in the paint, and that's what San Diego State defends the best, top 15 near basket defense. They don't turn the ball over a lot, but they're not as good on their own boards, something that North Carolina does really well in getting offensive glass opportunities. 28th in college basketball and converting those. On the other side, San Diego State, not necessarily known to be an offensive team, but they do force a lot of turnovers, and they do get a lot of offensive boards, two things that UNC kind of struggles at. But I do think North Carolina has the big advantage in the free throws. They are, on paper, the better defense or offensive team. Despite the fact that San Diego State is a better defensive team, I don't know if if their defense out strengthens the difference between the two offenses and two defenses. So I do think North Carolina can keep it in close in this game, especially if they can hit their free throws. But who knows who's going to be getting the whistle here? When you dive into this matchup a little bit more, the bigger reason why I do think North Carolina is going to win this game is because they have a pretty significant advantage. San Diego State's traveling over 2,000 miles basically to play this game. North Carolina is only going to be 300 miles from home. I'm going to expect that this is going to be a massive home advantage for North Carolina. They are the bigger team, the bigger school. They probably will end up having 70 to 80% of the crowd, which I do think is going to be enough for them to push them over the edge. But now that this line has moved to 4.5, in a super competitive game like this that I expect to be pretty low scoring, San Diego State is a really slow-paced team. I don't know. It's going to be a tough one for me. I do think North Carolina pulls through. I do think it's going to be very close, like a lot of their games have been down the stretch. I think San Diego State's going to come out hot. They did play a pretty tough team in Boise State in their one and only game in the neutral courts. But that means they will have one extra day's rest over North Carolina. UNC is coming off a pretty emotional loss to Duke in a game that they realistically should have won without any Cooper flag on the other team. Obviously, both these teams haven't really played much of a common opponents, but they both actually have played California. Both of them beat California by 20 points. So, yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting game. I think, obviously, the ACC, top 5 in difficulty, the Mountain West, top 7, there's not a significant advantage. Obviously, neither of these teams led their conference at the end of the year. So, yeah, I'm going to lean San Diego State. Probably I'm not going to bet it. North Carolina, I do think is going to advance. I think it's going to be a really tight game, especially if San Diego State can find out some success offensively. But if North Carolina continues to turn the ball over a decent amount, I do think this is going to be a really tight game with North Carolina's talent coming through in the final 5 minutes. All right, heading on to game number 3, we have Mount St. Mary's versus American. Now, I really love Mount St. Mary's in this spot. American obviously has looked like the better team to end off the year, but they've had a significant advantage that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, which is the fact that, yes, they've been really good lately, but they're still a team that struggles a lot on the road. American, one of the uniquenesses of the Patriot League is that in the conference tournaments, the home team plays at home. You don't play on a neutral floor. So they had 3 games in a row where they beat teams at home, but they're a team with one of the best home advantages in all of college basketball. If you look at their power ratings, they have the 41st best home advantage in all of college basketball, the second best in the conference. And if you look at their predictive ratings on the road, they're almost a bottom 300 team, just barely in ranked 286 compared to Mount St. Mary on the road, 208th. I think Mount St. Mary's is going to be a lot more comfortable here. They just played 3 games on a neutral court. American just had to win 3 games at home. If you look at all of their losses, they basically haven't lost at home since late December. And road losses, their last 3 losses were on the road, except for their loss to Navy at home. That was kind of a meaningless game before the tournament. Yeah, I genuinely do believe Mount St. Mary's here is going to feel a lot more comfortable. In terms of travel, this game is about equal for both teams, a little over 300 miles away from where they typically would play. So I think it's going to be a pretty split. I do think Mount St. Mary's probably has a bigger fan base than American does. American has some advantages, obviously. One of the biggest being continuity. Their team is, I'm not exactly sure what the number is, but they're one of the teams that have kept most of their players from last year. So they do have a lot of, I guess, benefit of just knowing each other really well and how each other play. They're going to try to hype each other up. But on paper, I do think Mount St. Mary's is a much better road team in this neutral environment. I think they're going to have the benefit. Obviously, they play in the MAC, which I do believe is probably a top 20 conference. Nothing impressive, but definitely a few levels above the Patriot League. So I do think Mount St. Mary's has the record quality advantage and strength of schedule, at least in conference-wise. If you look at this American team, again, they're a team that shoots a lot of threes. And, again, they're so used to playing at home. I think their threes are going to significantly fall off playing in a very new environment that they're not used to, with a crowd that isn't necessarily going to be on their side. They shoot almost 50% of their shots from 3. And Mount St. Mary, they defend everything okay, but they're a really good three-point defense. Basically top 100 three-point defense. They don't give you second chance opportunities. They don't foul you very much, even though American is a very good free throw shooting team. I think that's going to be a struggle for them. They do force a decent amount of turnovers. It's kind of Mount St. Mary's, I guess, weakness or their kryptonite is that they do turn the ball over a lot. But I don't think it's going to be enough of an advantage here. I think Mount St. Mary's is the much better defensive team. If they're able to determine the pace of this game, American plays really slowly, and if Mount St. Mary's can make them have to play at a different pace, it's going to be an advantage for Mount St. Mary's. Both these teams have very senior-driven teams. Mount St. Mary's is also a team that shoots a lot from 3 mid-range. Both these teams are decent at defending, but I do think Mount St. Mary has a slight edge on the three-point shot, big edge in the mid-range, a pretty massive edge in the paint, and I think they will get to the line a little bit more against an American team that fouls quite a lot more. So I think Mount St. Mary's can pull this game. American, I think they're playing way above their head. In terms of regression, they're due for a bunch. Both these teams are due for a ton of regression, so we're not necessarily sure what we're going to get. But it is a surprise to me that both these teams ended up winning their conference tournaments. But if I had to pick a team, I do like Mount St. Mary's here. +3 and on the money line to advance to the top 64. All right, and that brings us to our first tournament lock, or my favorite game of the first 4 games, and that's going to be Xavier versus Texas. When I look at this game from different kind of lenses, I think this is a huge advantage here for the Xavier team. Obviously, Texas is a good story. They had to fight really hard in the tournament to even make it into this first 4. And you could argue that this is going to be a big game for them. But the biggest thing that I see when I look at this game is kind of the advantage that Xavier has. That's just strictly going to be location. Xavier, 50 miles away from where they typically play. This is basically going to be a home game for them. Texas is going to have to travel over 1,000 miles to play this game. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games, only barely beating NC State by 4 points. Last time they've had to travel about 1,000 miles. So this is going to be a tough spot for them. The crowd, I would imagine, is going to be heavily Xavier favored. It's pretty tough for a bunch of, to get all your fans to pay money to travel 1,000 miles to watch you play, especially if it could only just be one game. Now, not only do I think they have a huge advantage there, but if you look at what these two teams do well and what they defend well, I think Xavier has a big edge. Xavier, they're a team that shoots a lot of threes in near basket shots, and they're an elite team at getting to the free throw line. Now, Xavier, 40% of their shots come from 3. They're ranked 7th in 3-point percentage, elite 3-point shooting team against a Texas team ranked 76th in 3-point defense. They're a decent mid-range team, shooting about 20% from the mid-range, top 75 versus a Texas team that is just barely in the top 100 in defending. In the paint, Texas obviously has an advantage, definitely in size. And they also don't turn the ball over too much. But I do think Xavier's slightly better on the offensive glass than this Texas team, so they probably will end up with a slight offensive rebound advantage overall. But the biggest thing is Texas fouls a lot, right? 263rd in how often they give free throws to their opponent. Xavier is a top 60 team in going to the line, and they're one of the best free throw shooting teams, 11th best in college basketball. And I think that's going to give them a huge edge here in getting points, especially if it's going to be basically a home whistle with the crowd reactions. I think they're going to have a huge advantage here. And they've been playing really good to end off the year. Texas, they're a team that likes to shoot a decent amount of mid-range. Almost 30% of the shots come from the mid-range. And that's what Xavier defends the best, top 50 mid-range defense team. Otherwise, they shoot in the paint. It will be a decent advantage here for Texas in the paint, but Xavier does not turn the ball over, ranked 30th, 29th actually in limiting points off steals. Top 100 second chance opportunity team, much better than Texas. Texas also a decent free throw shooting team, and they get to the line a lot, but Xavier fouls at a significantly smaller rate than this Texas team. So everything that really points to me here, I think Xavier is going to be the better team that gets to dictate the pace. They play it really quickly. Then they're going to get to line a ton, especially in transition. They can have an advantage on the glass, advantage from the three-point line, which I do think is going to be a big problem here for a Texas team that is not used to playing these teams that can kind of play and score from many different angles. Xavier actually due for some positive regression, so Texas. So both these teams are playing, I guess in theory, below where they're expected to play in. But again, I do think this is going to be a tough spot here. Xavier has 1 extra day's rest. They lost to Marquette in a tough game. Texas lost on the 14th. So we have 1 extra day's rest for the Xavier team, who's going to be playing at home, basically, versus a Texas team that just played 3 games in a row, then having to play only 4 days later, compared to a Xavier team that hasn't played since the 13th and is playing at home, only played 1 game. I think they're going to be more motivated for this tournament, especially after not getting a single win in the tournament. Neither team has really any significant injuries that's going to, I think, damper them here. The bigger thing is, yes, Texas has won their last 2 head-to-head matchups in 2019 and 2023, but I do think Xavier had much worse teams, and this is definitely one of Texas' more shittier teams they have had in the past 10 years, at least talent-wise. Yeah, I'm going to have to take Xavier here. I think the home edge is going to be too much. They have a good matchup. And I think having not won a single game yet in the conference tournament, they're going to be extra motivated here with the crowd behind them. So this is the only game I'm going to bet, and it's going to be my lock. Xavier -3, Xavier to advance to the round of 64. All right, and that brings us to my three futures that at least I'm sharing with you. I have like 20 futures. A lot of them I don't think have necessarily aged too well with some injuries and whatnot. But Gonzaga at plus 4,100, I think they're a team to watch. In terms of teams that are elite, they're one of the only teams that are due for a significant amount of regression. Um, they're one of the better teams at playing against top 25 teams in college basketball. They play up to their competition, and I think they're going to have to play a lot of tough teams in this tournament. I think they're kind of I wouldn't say a dark horse, but I think they were bad enough in the regular season where people aren't expecting much, but they have the talent, and I think they have the chance to show up here. St. John's, they are just a special team. I think they have probably the best locker room out of any team right now in college basketball. They are due for a ton of regression, but every single time I watch them play, they keep shitting on teams by like 15 to 20 points, especially in the final minutes. They have the ability to, like no other team, to close out games. Definitely one of the best teams in the final 10 minutes. It's hard to really bet against them. Obviously, they haven't had to play too many elite teams, but man, they are fun to watch when they're playing. And now that their team seems to be scoring the ball better, their elite defense is starting to shine through even more now that they're actually getting the ball in the hoop. So I think they're one of those teams that could win it all. They've been playing just way too well. And obviously, Florida, this is going to be my most confident bet. I think, in my opinion, they're the most balanced team in all of college basketball. They play really good offense, really good defense. They're healthy. They have some of the most impressive wins out of any team in this tournament, having beaten the likes of Auburn. They beat Alabama twice. They beat Tennessee 2 of 3 times. Actually, 2 of 3 times. Played close against Kentucky. They beat Texas A&M, Missouri, North Carolina, Mississippi State, Georgia, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. This team has played a really tough competition, and they've beaten almost every single one of them. I think that they're going to be the most favorite. The way they played the tournament makes me believe that they are going to be the team to beat. Many people are thinking Auburn's probably the best favorite team, but yeah, I don't know, man. This Florida team stepping up. We really have no idea. Duke was my favorite bet before, but with all the Cooper Flag injury stuff, obviously they still played decently well. They didn't really have to play that much elite competition in the conference tournament. I don't think that really proves that they can beat these kind of teams without Cooper Flag. And they're kind of being hush-hush about it, but high ankle sprain is not something that you can easily recover from. If he does play, I think he's going to end up playing with limited minutes. I think Florida it should be and is, in my opinion, the favorite to win the tournament. So that is going to be my favorite actual bet. They're the best team at playing top 25 teams. They show up when they have to. They're balanced. They don't turn the ball over. They do everything well. Beautiful team to watch play basketball. All right, and to summarize everything, Xavier -3, my only bet and my favorite bet of the in-conference game. That game will be held on for Wednesday, 9:10 p.m. Mount St. Mary's is my second favorite game. I might end up betting it. On the money line, I do think they are the better team, with American having to travel and play a neutral court for the first time in a long time. San Diego State, I think they can keep this number close, but I do believe that North Carolina will win. And same with St. Francis. I think Alabama State is the more experienced team and will pull through, but I do believe that scrappiness in the flash is enough to keep this game within the number, especially at plus 4.5. Plus, at -3.5 yesterday, I didn't love it, but the extra point's a big deal, in my opinion. So those are my four favorite bets for the first 4. I will have a full bracket coming up probably Wednesday night once we kind of see how these first rounds settles. I do personally believe that all 4 of these teams are first round exits, except for maybe Xavier. So I guess I could maybe even build a thing earlier. Check the spreadsheet. I have a Excel Sheets tab with my bracket. It's not an official bracket yet. Well, once I post a video, that would be my official public bracket. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully we have an awesome tournament, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.